Hi, Dr. Jennifer. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yes, I am thrilled to have you because I have the unique pleasure of knowing what you've kind of offered the health coaching community within EquiLife up until now, since I've known you. And so I'm really excited to kind of bring your wisdom to our listeners and kind of beyond. So thanks for being here and taking the time to do this.
You're welcome.
What I would love to do to start is, could you share with our listeners who might not know your role within the EquiLife company, what you're currently doing with our company? And then we'll back it up a little bit and kind of talk about maybe what got you here, what you were doing before this, and kind of some of your backstory.
Sure. Happy to. So my current title at EquiLife, and I work at EquiLife, is Vice President of Health Sciences Educational Division, which is a big mouthful. That really what it means is that I'm in charge of teaching, mentoring, general cheerleading for all things related to health coaching or the labs and the part of the company that has to do with helping clients. And also a big part of my role continues to be part of IHP as faculty in the Mastery program. And I also am doing an increasing amount of teaching and mentoring with the ambassadors community as well. So that's and I still, in this role, which is a second role for me in EquiLife, I continue to teach and mentor the internal health coaching team at EquiLife on a regular basis too. So that's what I do now.
Okay. Yes, which is a huge, huge privilege. I would say they would all agree. So let's do a little bit of like a backup because you have a pretty extensive and very interesting past that's kind of led you here. So would you share with our listeners how you currently, or how you got started really more in like the health space, because you were in the health space, and how it all transitioned to kind of where you are now?
Yes, it's a long and winding road. So my initial career was ophthalmology. So I went to medical school, got an MD, went to residency training in ophthalmology, which is eye surgery. And then I became a professor of ophthalmology at Northwestern University in Chicago, and spent almost 10 years doing that work. So my work was practicing ophthalmology, teaching eye surgery, and doing research. I was a very high level leader in the organized ophthalmology world, which is like the American Academy of Ophthalmology. I traveled internationally, teaching surgery, writing papers. So I would say I had a very big academic medical career. And then to make it very simple, make a complicated story simple, I became increasingly unhappy and unfulfilled mostly in the practice part of that, the day-to-day seeing of patients part of that work, and eventually quit practicing and left medicine altogether because I just felt I could no longer keep doing that work and be healthy. After I quit practicing, at the time I quit practicing, I had young children. So one of the things I did when I first quit practicing was take a few years to be a mom and spend more time with my kids, which was it was a wonderful opportunity and interval in my life. And I think it was great for my kids to have a lot more time with their mom when they were that age. During that stay-at-home mom, quote unquote, part of my life, though, I also got an MBA. So I wasn't totally just focused on kid stuff. I was also back in school. The next thing that happened was I met a very creative, interesting man whose background was in counseling. He's a therapist, but his area of expertise was in working with highly talented and gifted people. I saw him give a lecture and I just thought he was fascinating and amazing, and set about meeting him and then learning from him. And what happened then for the next many, many years was I learned how to do the work that he was doing and became a part of the practice that he ran, both working with gifted and talented kids and adults myself. And then over time that developed and evolved into doing an executive coaching practice, utilizing a lot of the things that I learned in that counseling practice, which was very focused on communication skills, the neurology of learning and language, as well as how to interpersonally talk to people and help people through relationship. A whole bunch of skills that I never ever learned in medical school. In fact, was sort of trained out of me in medical school, and I learned how to come back to being emotionally connected to people through those years. So I worked for a long time as an executive coach, helping all kinds of interesting, bright adult people get what they wanted from their careers. Sort of. That's to a simple way to say it. And I had left medicine completely and had no intention of ever coming back to healthcare. And then I met a woman who was doing functional medicine, a chiropractor actually, at a networking event where I was there representing my executive coaching business. And she came over to me and said, "I think you're the doctor I've been looking for." And I said, "I really don't think you are. I don't think I am. I'm not doing that anymore." And she said, "No, but I really think you are." So she eventually persuaded me to come back into medical practice doing functional medicine. So I got trained through the Institute for Functional Medicine in functional medicine and went back into practice within her practice and did that for a year and a half or so. And I learned a lot of things in that time. First of all, I had been personally increasingly involved in functional and natural medicine. Even before I met her, I'd been discovering all of the things that we all know for myself and my family. Then I got formally trained and began to work with patients again. And I learned that number one, that I really truly believed in that model of taking care of people, of functional medicine. I also learned that I really still didn't love the day-to-day practicing of medicine with patients like that. It just wasn't quite doing it for me. So I eventually wrapped up that practice and began looking to do something different. Overlapping with that time that I was in functional medicine practice, and I kept my executive coaching work going along on the side as well. I had always had an interest in energy medicine and all things intuitive, and had been on the lookout over the years for the right type of training program for me to develop my energy healing skills. And I had taken a few courses off and on, but never really found something that was a good fit for me. And then I found the Four Winds Society, which is a shamanic healing training school. And so I became trained and initiated as a shaman, as a shamanic energy healer, which opened up a whole new world for me of people, of ways of looking after people's wellness and well-being from an even broader spectrum and perspective than what natural health and functional medicine did. So I was going through these progressive steps in my career of broadening, taking off blinders, seeing new ways to do things, keeping the things that I'd learned in the past, even from conventional medicine, and keeping the stuff that made sense to me and worked, and tossing out the stuff that I didn't believe in or didn't agree with. And I just kept adding knowledge and expanding my horizons of understanding what makes a human being tick and how to help other human beings. And around that time that I was wrapping up my practice of functional medicine was when I saw a job posting for a startup company that was a natural wellness company, online company, that was looking for a medical director, which was Dr. Cabral. And so I met with him, and the rest is history. He hired me to be the very first, initially, medical director at what was then Equilibrium Nutrition. And then eventually my title became a different title. It doesn't really matter, but I was running the health coaching team and the labs at EquiLife for 2 years, which was just a fantastic, wonderful position, because the company, as you guys all know, was doing things that I felt were very important and worthy. And I was in the position to build and grow and support and supervise this incredible health coaching team. And I used all of my skills that I learned as an executive coach also in my work with the health coaching team, so that we have a team that is not just knowledgeable, but has an ongoing development of their ability to be really effective communicators and all the soft skills that go into coaching as well. And I continue doing that work with the health coaching team to this day. And then when I transitioned out of that, running the health coaching team into this educational role almost a year ago now. And there you have it.
What a journey. So what I love about kind of what you shared is it's kind of this, everybody I think thinks that like, we kind of start here for people who obviously aren't on video, like I'm at the bottom of the screen and we work our way up. And ultimately, like when you're up here, like you're doing all of the things that you were doing when you were teaching and you were, doing surgery and you were an ophthalmologist and like you got there, right?
Yeah.
You arrived. And for so many people, that's kind of like the pinnacle of success. But up at that top, you kind of kept going to the side and you're like, nope, next thing. And kind of working through your journey, even kind of at a higher level. I think there's so many people that think like you do that from the bottom and like you kind of keep creeping up. But I think for so many of us to kind of understand that it doesn't matter like what level of quote unquote success we've reached, even if there's something that doesn't feel like it's aligning necessarily, that we can kind of keep moving forward on the continuum, which It sounds like that's exactly what you've done. And I think you've probably gained some really deep wisdom in that process, which I would love to kind of have you share with our listeners next, which is a little bit of kind of what would you say is one of the most important things that you learned in those years that maybe could be applicable to coaches either starting businesses or thinking about, running practices or even changing careers, thinking to themselves, like, I want to move. I mean, I've interviewed bankers, all sorts of construction workers who come from very unusual backgrounds into health coaching. So what would be one of your like top pieces of wisdom for those listening who might kind of be going like, wow, this seems super interesting?
Well, it's a great question, Julia. And what I would say, one of the most important pearls of wisdom that I've gotten so far in my life, and I want you guys all to understand, I am not done figuring this out. I am where I am now, and I love being here. And I see my life as a never-ending educational experience. So that's just the value that I hold. It's a way of living that I follow, because I know this about myself. If I just start coasting or stop learning actively, challenging myself, I don't thrive. I need that constant. I'm a little bit like a shark. I need to keep moving and keep learning and growing and challenging myself. Now, the pearl that I would like to kind of offer to you guys, that what I've learned through all the stuff I've already done, is the idea of aligning the work that I do in the world with who I truly am. I can see now in the 2020 hindsight, looking back on my initial choice to become an ophthalmologist, as it was a good guess at the time I was making those decisions in my early 20s. But being an MD ophthalmologist was not really aligned for me with what was deeply meaningful and purposeful for me as a human being on this planet. Now, was it somewhat aligned? Yes, because helping people and teaching people are things that are very much aligned for me and important to me. However, a lot of the stuff that comes along with medical practice was not a good fit for me, was not aligned for me well. And I'm not going to go into all of that, because that's not really, it's interesting, but it's not really the most interesting thing that I want to say. The idea, though, that when I am doing work in the world that is very well aligned for me, for who I am, and what that is for me, what that alignment needs to be for me, by the way, is very unique to me. And what might be well aligned for me is not necessarily well aligned for you, Julia, or for anybody listening. So I know that one of the reasons I became so very unhappy over time in the medical practice had to do with this misalignment. And over the years, as I've done different things and different types of work, and that has evolved for me over time, what I've learned and then reinforced is that when I begin to feel any sort of frustration or lack of motivation or other kinds of sensations that would kind of go along, or I'm not getting what I'm not accomplishing what I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm feeling stuck or somehow limited. That is a signal for me that something's not aligned. And I have to stop and really reflect on, what is the thing I'm trying to do? What is this job I'm doing right now? What is this work I'm doing? What is the thing I'm trying to do? If it's something I'm trying to do and I haven't gotten it yet. And is that really aligned with what's purposeful and meaningful for me in the world or not? And if it isn't, then the next thing I ask is, can I shift something about what I'm doing in this work, let's say it's in a particular job? Is there a way I can shift what I'm doing to make it a better fit for me so that I can feel successful, not really successful, aligned, fulfilled, content, joyful, those kinds of feelings? Or is this work that I'm doing right now simply it's not possible for me to tweak it, shift it, adjust it in any sort of way that I can actually create that kind of alignment for myself? And is it time for me to let this go and do something different? That's the cycle that I move through in my life now. The very first time that I came up against this reality that I was working doing work in the world that wasn't well aligned for me was when I was a doctor, when I was an ophthalmologist. And what I needed to do was stop doing that work. But the choice to do that, the decision to stop being Dr. Smith, ophthalmologist, professor, high-level leader, there was so much pressure from myself and from all sorts of people and systems around me to stay in that role that it took me a long time to break out of it, basically, and successfully quit, because it was so frightening for me. What happens when I'm not this? Who am I when I'm not this anymore? It was what I had worked my whole life towards. I had reached that pinnacle. I had accomplished everything that I had set out to accomplish. And suddenly I had to admit to myself, I am very unhappy at this pinnacle, at this success point. Mm-hmm. And so the level of dysfunction or discomfort, however you want to describe the sensation that I have when I'm not in a good fit, it had to build to a very high level of discomfort and pain in order for me to push through that resistance of leaving so that I could get free. Since I did that then, and then I learned, well, it didn't kill me. I found some stuff out on the other side of that. It freed me to learn and grow in ways I never could have imagined. After I moved through that initial letting go that first time, then what I learned was I can do that and it's okay. And so ever since then in my life, I've been a lot more willing to consider letting something go or significantly changing something that I'm doing so that I can keep myself aligned and thriving. Sometimes all I need to do is make a small adjustment to the focus of what I'm doing in a given line of work. And sometimes I really do have to let go of something and move into something else. As a human being, and I think this is likely true of everybody who's listening, I continue to grow and change and evolve. So what I need and what is aligned for me or isn't aligned for me is not necessarily the same when I'm 25 years old as when I'm 50 years old. So developing, it's been important for me to develop this sense of flexibility and curiosity and allowing for me to explore other things, ask for things of myself or others that maybe other people don't ask for, make choices that other people might disapprove of, because I have increasingly learned in my life to follow my own compass and therefore take responsibility for things that work out well and things that are mistakes. But but seeing my life as a never-ending experiment, and I'm continuously refining how I understand that radar system, that compass that I operate from. All of those things they all come back to, am I doing work in the world that's aligned with who I really am? And as I've moved through all of these experiences in my life, my sense of who I really am and what that alignment needs to be I've honed in on it. I've gotten clearer about it. I remember very, very well when I was it was in the first couple of years after I had left practicing medicine. I was probably in the middle of getting my MBA, and I was learning through the course of that MBA program that definitely was not going to be the answer for me. It was good stuff to know, but I definitely knew that I was not headed for a big corporate career after that. It just wasn't a good fit either. Mm-hmm. But as I was in that time period, was when I first came into contact with this idea of purpose and meaning. And I had understood in a general sense before that there were people in the world who were highly purpose-driven. It was a spiritual calling for them, whatever it was. But I understood that there were people in the world who had this sort of clear sense of, this is what I meant to be doing in my life. And I also had this belief about myself that I didn't have a big purpose like that I was making decisions in my life that had to do with what I'm good at and what's a good idea for the world and what seems interesting. But I didn't really understand that every single person is born with some sort of deep purpose and meaning. Now, this is simply my belief about it. Other people don't have to believe this way, but this is what I came to understand. And once I came to understand that, oh, I have a purpose too. I just don't know what that is right now. I'm not clear about what that is. Well, then I started to apply all of my considerable intellectual energy towards, I'm going to figure this out. And I approached it at first in this very kind of intellectual research kind of way, because that's what I knew how to do. It turns out you can't just power through figuring that stuff out. You actually have to learn how to get really quiet and let go of pushing mentally and sit still. And I learned how to meditate, and I learned how to spend time actually just not doing stuff. And that was the complete opposite of what I had learned in my life was required for me to be successful and thrive and be approved of by others. I had been very successful in my life by doing, and using my brain in my intellect. I had to learn to do this other thing, which was quiet, calm, still, listening, feeling for things. It wasn't possible for me to even hear that kind of wisdom when I was in the midst of practicing medicine, because I was too shut down. The human part of me, the emotional part of me was too shut down, which was what was required, trained into me and required in medical practice. So as I got farther away from the day-to-day medical practice after I left, I was able to relax, emotionally thaw out. I was fortunate enough to meet some very wise mentors who were much more in touch with that side of existence, which looks like intuition and meditation and listening and spirituality. I was very, very lucky to meet some people who helped me develop that skill set. And then I read tons of books. I did a lot of things. But I'm saying all of this because I want everybody who's listening to understand that if you're not clear about what your purpose is or who you really are, yeah, that's okay. I know I was there, and I was close to 40 years old at that point in my life. So it's okay if it's great if you're like, I totally know what my purpose and meaning is and I'm going for it. It's also completely okay if you're listening to this right now and you're like, geez, I have no idea. It doesn't, none of that matters. It's the concept that I want to get across, which is tuning into, is what I'm doing, is the coaching practice that I'm developing, is the kind of clientele that I'm attracting, is the name of my coaching business, all of it, is that lined up for me with what I really care about, who I really am, and what really means something to me in the grand scheme of what I'm here on this planet to do with my life? It's possible because I ask these questions and talk about these things with my executive coaching clients. So I know that lots of people who are very successful can be completely out of touch with this idea of purpose. And I know for a fact that even if you can't articulate what your purpose is, you can kind of instinctively respond to the question, is this thing I'm doing lined up with me or not? Even if you can't articulate it, a person can usually still have a sense of what the answer to that question is. So I wanted to say that to this audience, because even if you're like, I have no idea, so how can I possibly use this to guide me in any way? Well, the answer is you don't have to actually be able to put this into words or know, or be able to put into a nice, elevator pitch what your purpose is. You don't have to know it in order to get a feel for whether what you're creating in your health coaching work is aligned for you or not. That's going to be a gut instinct. Mm-hmm. I'll stop there for a second, see if there's any questions you have, Julia, or anything you wanted me to kind of expand on.
Yeah. And I think it kind of what you just said goes along with, taking the intellect out of it and allowing yourself, because somebody who's over intellectual could be like, okay, this is my name. Does that feel right? Is this, and kind of pick it apart intellectually. But if you get quiet and still and allow yourself to just simply feel what it would be like to kind of practice and work with the clients that someone's going to work with when setting up a business. And how does the name feel when you see it? Does it feel like it lights you up inside, or does it kind of make you go, oh, wait a minute, being able to just simply allow yourself to feel that stuff. Because I think too, when you're starting a business, right, it can kind of put you in that like really intellectual space. Like you're trying to figure out, how am I going to process credit cards? How am I going to set up my website? And it's like very check these boxes.
Yes.
But there's this other major piece, right, that I would, I've shared with you before that I have worked with a shaman for now, probably close to 15 years. And she's helped me through so many facets of life just by kind of energetically tapping into what feels right. And so when somebody's kind of always in that, I'm going to start a business, and these are all of the boxes that I'm going to check, that big piece, in my opinion, others might argue differently, of kind of how does this feel and how does it align with my purpose? I think what you're trying to say is that's ultimately what's going to kind of drive you forward with lots of success, and not necessarily financial, but more of I'm not going to get burnt out. I feel like this is something that I'm here to do. This is going to light me up every morning when I wake up. I'm not going to feel frustrated meeting with clients. And that then allows you to kind of go forward and help others in a much more meaningful way, because you're not dealing with like the stagnant energy of this doesn't align.
Yes. Everything you said, I agree with 100%. And there's so much to this topic. There's so much that has to do with what happens when I'll speak for myself. What happens when I am doing work that's very well aligned with my purpose, versus what happens to me when I'm doing work that is not well aligned with my purpose. And I'll tell you guys, and this applies, I'm sure, to lots of you, because if you're doing IHP, you have a lot of intellectual horsepower, or you wouldn't be interested in IHP. It requires a lot of brain power to do this work. So I know that anybody who's listening to this can identify to some degree with what I'm about to say. I have a lot of intellectual horsepower and ability. That means that I can brute force, but just force of will and intellect, I can create a good deal of success. And whether that's financial or just getting stuff done, getting the checklist checked off, persuading another person to do this or that, leading, all these things that come along with that high intellectual energy, horsepower, and intelligence, et cetera. I can accomplish a lot even if I'm not aligned with what I'm doing. The difference is that if I'm applying all of my intellectual energy to something I am very well aligned with, then it feels like flying. It feels like the effort level disappears. I don't notice that I'm doing work if I'm doing something that's right smack in the middle of my purpose. And I'll say something right in this moment. What I'm doing right now, this conversation that I'm having with you, Julia, right now, this is smack in the middle of my purpose in life. My purpose, and I can articulate mine, and I don't expect anybody else to feel like they should have to articulate their purpose, but I'm going to do it because I want you to sort of have just an example. I know that my purpose in life is about fanning sparks into flames. It's about activating potential in other people. There's a whole lot of different ways that that can manifest, but I make sure in my work now that I am finding ways to align with that core purpose for me. So right now in this moment, I'm recording a podcast, having a conversation where I am hopefully saying words that land with a few people that get some spark fanned into a flame for somebody. Because of that, this time is flying by. The words are flying out of my mouth. I don't feel like I'm struggling to express myself. I am in the flow right now. That's what it feels like when I'm doing my work in the world that in alignment with my purpose. Now, I'll contrast that to a real great example would be doing work such as when I was doing that functional medicine practice. It seems like it would be aligned, but I felt heaviness. I felt lack of motivation. I wasn't excited to get up in the morning and do my work. I was still successful. I was still able to help those patients and create, positive impact in the world, but it felt heavy. Time went slowly. I didn't look forward to it. It wasn't, and the practice wasn't actually growing at a high rate. It felt difficult. And so, and I won't go into right now, just for the sake of time, any dissection as to why that was not aligned for me versus what I'm doing right now, or the work that I do at EquiLife right now is another work in the world that feels very aligned for me. Sitting with a group of my health coaches at EquiLife, teaching them, mentoring them, supporting them in what they're doing, that I wake up and I'm excited to do that work every day. I'm saying all of this because I want you guys to get a sense of how you might start to discern for yourself what the work you're doing right now or the work you're planning to do right now, whether that's aligned or not for you, at least beginning to get a sense of how you might judge that for yourself. And for me, it has to do with the contrast between feeling weightless, joyful, effortless, time flies by, versus heaviness, walking through molasses, feeling like it's hard, not motivated, not looking forward to it. A heaviness versus a lightness. Those are some of the ways I could describe the contrast. I also want to circle around to something that I said. I want to give an example of something, tweaking work where you might have identified that you're doing work in the world that isn't totally well aligned for you. And I can give a very concrete recent example of that situation and what I did to tweak something rather than have to completely walk away. When I first came to work at Equilibrium Nutrition, which is now EquiLife, my role was to run the health coaching team. And then there was a bunch of other responsibilities that had to do with very administrative things and things that are not my kind of favorite stuff to do, but it was part of the work that I was there to do. And at the beginning, my role was not defined. The job description was not defined, including anything that was incorporating my skill set of being an executive coach or my deepest purpose. My role was defined as, supervising all the labs, supervising the health coaches, and providing advice for them. But what I did was I recognized that I needed to tweak my day-to-day work in a way that was more aligned with what really lights me up, which is fanning sparks into flames. So what did I do? I began creating a training program for the health coaching team, which continues to run to this very day, where every week we get together in a group and I work with them using my executive coaching skills, teaching them deeply in communications skills, and also helping them develop their skills as human beings as it relates to being a health coach. Well, that stuff lights my fire. I love Wednesdays. I get to do that work with them. And so I tweaked a position where the mission of the company was aligned for me. I liked the people I was working with, but I needed to tweak it in a way that brought it into more alignment. with my core purpose so that I could feel that weightlessness, that energy source. I consider being aligned with purpose as tapping into this infinite source of energy so that it propels me forward through some of the stuff that's maybe not so interesting. Yes, you're creating a business. You might not love having to figure out how to do a back end of a website or how to do payroll or credit cards, yet you need that stuff. So tapping into this energy source to move you through tasks that might not be perfectly aligned with your purpose, but have to get done, is if the work you're doing in the grander scheme is aligned for you within your purpose, then that helps move you through the parts of every single job that I think almost everybody has. Unless you're extraordinarily unusual, all of us have to do some aspect of real life stuff that's not necessarily our favorite thing to do as part of our work. That just comes with it. So I wanted to really call that out.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it kind of just like, that's the lightness that makes everything else that might be heavy, not feel so heavy. And I always say, or I had a family member who would always say, like, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes.
And that's like this very like, sounds like super magical, right? But that's like kind of at the core of what we're talking about is if you feel aligned energetically with the, purpose and what you're here to do, and you kind of feel more love than fear or more abundance than fear, that is the loving what you're doing. And then it doesn't feel like work. You're not going off to the office begrudgingly every day, and you're not agitated at at 5 o'clock. And I think for so many people, even if they're doing something that they know they want to do, if there's little things that are off, right?
Yep.
Those can be, like you said, kind of remanaged to where things now feel like it's flowing and much lighter. And I would argue, and I'm curious your thought, I think our clients on the other end pick up on how well we are truly aligned and feeling, purposeful. And they receive it as kind of empowerment on their end in a sense, right? It's not this codependency in a way, but it kind of just fans their spark, right?
It does. Yes.
What you're saying. Yeah.
I agree completely that your energetic state when you're working with a client is central, crucial for how effective you can be at helping move that client through the change process they need to move through. And that's the way that I view health coaching. It is your job to assist, walk next to your client through their change process. You might have some stuff to tell them. You might have some information to give them and some directions to give them, products to take, whatever it might be. But your role as a health coach, and this is stuff that I talk about in Mastery at length, is your role as the health coach is to help walk with them, next to them through a change process. Your job is not to fix their problem or to fix them or to solve anything for them. Your job is to be there as in support and help them by holding them accountable. However, so your energetic state when you are in contact with your clients, to me, is crucially important, because I'll contrast that to if you view your work as a health coach, as a technician, where your job is to provide information, give them instructions, and that information and instructions is going to be the same whether you're feeling closed down and heavy or light and joyful. That would be a way of viewing this that I wouldn't agree with. Whereas if you view yourself as a person whose job it is to, again, walk next to this person as they move through their change process, and you think about how your state of being, your energetic state, your mood, your however you want to conceptualize that, how that would impact somebody if all you can do is walk next to them. You don't get to get on their path and block for them. You don't get to hold their DNS shake up to their mouth and put it into their mouth for them. All you can do is just walk next to them and be a cheerleader and a supporter. Think about how differently your energetic state or your mood or your state of mind is how that it's very impactful to your ability to be effective with clients. 100% agree with that. And that all comes back to, are you aligned with purpose? Are you working with clients that are lined up with your purpose? Are you working in an arena of a topic, a subject matter that means something to you? Or are you working in an arena that you decided was the best choice because it seemed like the market needed a niche in that place, and you made the decision purely from a kind of external data-driven way? And there's nothing wrong with looking at the market or niching and all of that stuff, but if it's done in isolation and in disconnection from your own who you are, then you can get yourself into a situation where you're actually not aligned with your work, even though you're doing health coaching work.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's just this little tiny shift. Now, you mentioned mastery, which I think is a huge role that you have within the company. And I know a lot of students that have gone through it and find it so incredibly beneficial. They kind of just like up levels what they're doing. Is there one little piece of mastery that's your favorite? If it's different, it can be the same as what we've just talked about. But I think mastery touches a little bit differently on things that we've been talking about, or kind of the purpose of it. Is there one little thing in mastery, if people are like, what's mastery? That you could kind of share with the listeners that kind of encompasses everything, but like the biggest benefit that you think it brings to a health coach who's starting a practice?
Wow. Okay. That's a good question. Mastery, by the way, is one of my very favorite parts of my job. Just love it. Mastery is a recorded course like IHP. However, we have live workshops. So I get to spend 90 minutes to 2 hours about every month with the group it's a 6-month course. So I get a number of great meetings with the class, live meetings, and I get to really know the coaches. And so I absolutely love doing mastery. Mastery is about, from my perspective, keeping in mind that Dr. Cabral and I are co-faculty in that group, in that class. And so he teaches half of the material, I teach half of the material. So I can only speak for the material that I teach. But what I really see mastery doing for the student in the class is helping each individual person develop a clearer sense of their role as a human being in the interaction with the client, learning how to tap into the power that each one of us holds just by our very presence with another human being, as the key, as the core tool for the helping process. So it's, you're coming into mastery with all the knowledge. You have all the knowledge already. So in mastery, we're not talking about labs or protocols. We're talking about, okay, now let's look at you. You're the most important tool in the toolbox. And how do you develop your ability to facilitate the work by virtue of being a human being in presence with the other person? That's the key to it for me. It's the key to a lot of things, in my opinion, but that's what I'm up to in mastery in the grand scheme. There's a lot more to it, but that's what I ultimately want, hope for my students to come away from mastery with is my presence is enough. That is actually the healing effort that I make, is actually about my presence.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think lots of IHPs who've done mastery would agree, at least with conversations that I've had with them. And it kind of just allows them to confidently take all of the information that all of the intellectual information from, level 1 and level 2 about the logistics of nutrition and labs and all of that, and then feel confident sitting face to face with a client and being, present for them in the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to clarify for you guys who are listening who haven't done mastery, when I say the healing effect is your presence, that sounds very ephemeral, very vague, not defined. In the course, I am teaching you guys numerous different skills, actual skills that lead to that presence. And so, yes, it's a spiritual concept, but just understand that at the core of it, I am a heavy hitting intellectual, and this is not fluff. Backing up that idea of presence is a whole bunch of skills that I teach you guys in the course, to get you to a place where you understand what presence even means and how you need whatever you need to work on to develop your ability to show up that way in a meeting. And it's not like I just sit there and say, let's meditate together and you're going to magically know what this means. That's not what we're doing in that class. It's very skills based, even though I'm bringing in this important energetic and spiritual concept to it.
Yes. If you're fluff, you're tough fluff.
I'm tough fluff.
What everybody always says is she's tough, but man, does she because you hold your students accountable, and because there's a level of, you're wanting them to get the most out of it. And if you're not holding them accountable, they're not going to necessarily maybe do all of the things, that would allow them to get the most out of the program. And everybody at a certain point is like, oh my God, it was amazing. In the beginning, it's like, oh, I'm, being held accountable. But in the end, everybody is so grateful for what they've learned. So yeah, it's definitely not fluff.
No. And I think, I'll let you guys in on a little secret about that master. The way I do that, I'm modeling you guys. I'm modeling for you what you can do. Mm-hmm. So I show up, especially in the workshops, I show up behaving the way that I am seeking to teach you guys to show up with your clients. So it's all about modeling. And because the most effective coach is going to be coming with an open heart, with love, with presence, and with that toughness, or it's an aspect of presence that has to do with holding who I am and holding you accountable for who you are, and not being mushy about it. And so when I'm teaching that class, that's what I'm doing, is I'm showing you a way to do what I'm teaching you to do.
Right. Which is, to educate, to show up, to hold a loving space to learn. Mm-hmm. But still, it's your job, and you're holding the container for everybody else. Yeah.
And holding people accountable is part of that skill set. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So I can guarantee that there's lots of listeners who are thinking, oh my gosh, how do I learn more? This seems like something I kind of need to tap into or kind of explore, or they've just resonated with lots of things that you've said. How could they contact you or get in touch if they wanted kind of more mentorship type of information?
Great question. So first of all, for anybody who's thinking mastery sounds great after we just talked about it, that you can just reach out to IHP and ask them about the next mastery course. I don't know that we've announced the next enrollment, but I'm sure it'll be coming up in the next few months. The enrollment will be announced. We just wrapped up the end of the current course. And then in terms of getting in touch with me, I'd love to hear from you guys. So if anybody wants to reach out and be in touch with me, again, just reach out to IHP and ask them, tell them that you heard this podcast and that you would like to be put in touch with me via email. And then they'll probably pass your email on to me or something like that. But I'd love to hear from you guys. So if anyone wants to email with me, then please do.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. Dr. Jennifer, this has been such a pleasure for me. And I'm sure lots of the listeners have gained incredible wisdom with our conversation. And I thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure too, Julia. Thank you so much.
Okay. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.